I'll start by introducing my situation. My name is Jake, and for the last 6 years I thought I had a pretty solid marriage with my wife, Amanda. We met in college and our relationship blossomed into something I believed would last a lifetime. We had our ups and downs, sure, but who does? Amanda was charming, funny, and had this magnetic personality that drew people to her. I loved that about her. But over time, I started to notice things that made me uneasy. It began subtly, like when she seemed to be distracted during our conversations. She was often on her phone, texting late at night, or going out with her friends more frequently. I brushed it aside at first, telling myself it was just her needing some space. But as weeks turned into months, those little signs piled up. She started dressing more stylishly than usual, wearing clothes that were a bit too trendy for her personality. At first, I thought she was just trying to freshen up her wardrobe. I even encouraged it. Little did I know, I was encouraging her battlefield preparation. Then there was the day I stumbled upon one of those ridiculous text messages on her phone. I wasn't snooping, I just happened to pick it up when it buzzed with a message that read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." My heart dropped. It's amazing how quickly your mind can spiral into chaos. I felt a sickening wave of nausea wash over me, followed by a burning rage. My instincts kicked in and I had to know who the hell she was texting. When I confronted Amanda, she turned cold, icy even. "Jake, it's nothing." "You're overreacting," she said, flipping her hair back in that annoying way she does when she's trying to deflect. I demanded to know who Babe was, and she spun an elaborate web of lies, claiming it was just a friend, someone from her yoga class. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but the pit in my stomach was only getting deeper. Her excuses were pathetic. "I was just being playful, you know how I am," she said, trying to laugh it off as if it were a joke. I felt my blood boil. All I could think about was how easily she dismissed my feelings, how she was trying to make me out to be the crazy one. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make her feel the chaos I was feeling, but I held it together. I had to find out the truth. As days passed, my suspicion morphed into an obsession. I started noticing other signs, the smell of cologne on her clothes that wasn't mine, her late nights at work, the way she couldn't look me in the eye when she was lying. It became painfully clear to me that something was very wrong. It wasn't just her behavior, it was the way she had begun to change. And then one night, after a particularly long day at work, I decided to follow her. I know it sounds desperate and perhaps a bit cliché, but I needed to see for myself. I parked a few blocks away from our house and I watched as she got into this flashy car that wasn't ours. The car sped off and I trailed behind, my heart pounding in my chest. The destination, a trendy bar downtown. I parked nearby and waited. The scene that unfolded will forever be etched in my memory. I saw her laughing and flirting with a guy who looked like he walked straight out of a fashion magazine. They were close, too close for comfort. The way she leaned into him while taking a sip of her drink made my stomach churn. My world was crumbling and all I could do was watch. When I confronted her later that night, I was filled with a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness. I threw all my cards on the table, presenting her with the evidence I had witnessed. Her reaction was nothing short of chilling. Instead of remorse, she became defensive. "You don't understand what it's like, Jake. I needed someone who appreciates me." She spat, her voice dripping with contempt. It stung. In that moment, I realized it was no longer about salvaging what was left of our relationship. I was done being the fool in this twisted game. I felt my heart hardening as I processed everything. The betrayal cut deep, but it also ignited something in me, a desire for transformation, for revenge. I wouldn't allow her to walk all over me anymore. My journey was just beginning, and it wouldn't end with tears and forgiveness. No, I was going to rise from the ashes of this betrayal, and I was going to do it in style. The aftermath of the confrontation was a whirlwind of emotions. I felt betrayed, angry, and strangely motivated. It was as if I had been given a jolt of energy that propelled me into action. I knew I couldn't just sit around wallowing in my misery. I had to channel my pain into something productive. And what better way to do that than to reinvent myself? Amanda had chosen to cheat on me with some high-flying fashion designer. If she wanted to play in that world, I was going to show her I could outclass her in every way. I started with my wardrobe. My style had always leaned towards the casual and practical, comfortable jeans and t-shirts that I could wear to work or out with friends. But if I was going to reclaim my confidence, I needed to make a statement. I began researching fashion trends, following influencers on social media, and even reading up on men's style blogs. I wanted to know what would make me look sharp and put together. I took my first trip to a high-end men's clothing store. As I walked in, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The store was breathtaking with polished wood floors and suits that looked like they belonged on a runway. I was greeted by a well-dressed sales associate who immediately recognized that I was out of my element. "Looking to upgrade your style?" he asked with a knowing smile. I nodded, and for the first time in a while, I felt a spark of hope. The next few hours were exhilarating. I tried on blazers, tailored shirts, and even some designer shoes that I never thought I'd wear. Each mirror I stood in front of reflected a new version of me, one that was confident and strong. I invested in a few key pieces that would elevate my wardrobe: a tailored navy blazer, a crisp white shirt, and a pair of well-fitted trousers that made my legs look longer than they ever had. I even picked up some accessories like a sleek watch and a leather belt that pulled everything together. When I returned home, I felt like a new man. I stood in front of the mirror, admiring my reflection. I remembered the way Amanda used to look at me with desire. I wanted that spark back, not from her, but from within myself. I wanted to feel proud of who I was, regardless of her betrayal. As I began to transform my outward appearance, I also worked on my mental state. I hit the gym with a vengeance. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before, fueled by the desire to be the best version of myself. I felt stronger with each session, my muscles developing and my self-esteem growing. I was no longer the man who sat in the corner unsure of himself. I was becoming a force to be reckoned with. With my looks and physical fitness improving, I also began to explore my social life. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in ages. We went out, and I reveled in the attention I received from women. It felt good to be wanted again. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I just wanted to enjoy life and remind myself that I was still desirable. I started to embrace my new persona, and it felt like a breath of fresh air after months of suffocating disappointment. But deep down, the desire for revenge was simmering just beneath the surface. I wanted Amanda to see what she was missing. I wanted her to regret her choices and understand just how wrong she had been. I often imagined the look on her face when she would see me out with friends, dressed to the nines, laughing and enjoying life without her. It was a delicious thought, and I started to plan my grand reveal. As I navigated this new chapter in my life, I didn't forget about the betrayal. Instead, I used it as fuel. Every time I felt the sting of her deceit, I channeled that energy into pushing myself further, whether it was in the gym, in my wardrobe choices, or in my social life. I vowed not to be a victim of her actions. I would rise above and thrive. The final piece of my plan was to confront Amanda again, this time on my terms. I wanted to show her that I was no longer the man she had taken for granted. I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions, to realize that I was better off without her. It was time to execute the revenge I had been fantasizing about, and I was ready. Little did she know I was just getting started. With my transformation well underway, I felt a sense of purpose guiding me. I had my sights set on revenge, but it was more than just a desire to hurt Amanda. It was about reclaiming my life and showing her that I wouldn't be defined by her betrayal. Each day, I became more confident, more assertive, and more aware of my worth. But I knew that to deliver the ultimate blow, I needed to orchestrate my grand reveal carefully. I started by planning a night out, an event that would allow me to flaunt my new look and lifestyle while ensuring Amanda would be there to witness it. I knew she had a close-knit group of friends, and I decided to invite them all to a lavish dinner at a trendy restaurant downtown. I didn't want to make it obvious that I was doing this for her. Instead, I framed it as a chance to reconnect and celebrate the good times we used to have. I even sent out the invites with a sly comment about how I'd love to see everyone and catch up, knowing Amanda would be intrigued. The night of The dinner finally arrived, and I was filled with a mix of excitement and nerves. I dressed in my new tailored blazer and crisp shirt, the fabric hugging my body just right. I could feel the energy of the evening coursing through me as I arrived at the restaurant. It was buzzing with life, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. I stepped inside, and all eyes seemed to turn my way. The hostess led me to the table, and when I arrived, the reactions were immediate. My friends greeted me with surprised smiles, and for a moment I felt invincible. But the real power came when Amanda arrived. She walked into the restaurant, her usual confidence radiating, but the moment she laid eyes on me, her expression transformed. There was a flicker of shock, followed by a mixture of disbelief and regret. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't prepared for this version of me. She had always thought of me as the laid-back, easygoing guy who would never challenge her. But here I was, standing tall, looking sharp and radiating charisma. As the night unfolded, I made it a point to engage with everyone at the table, including Amanda. I caught up with our friends, sharing stories and laughing, while subtly dropping hints about my recent adventures. I talked about my new gym routine and the progress I had made, how I had been exploring new interests, even mentioning a few names of women I had been meeting. I could see Amanda squirm in her seat, her mind clearly racing with thoughts of our past and the reality of her decisions. Throughout the evening, I noticed her stealing glances at me, trying to gauge my demeanor. At one point, she leaned over and asked, "So Jake, what's with the sudden change? You look different." Her voice dripped with that same faux concern she had used before. I smirked, feeling the power of my transformation. "I just realized that life, too short to be anything but my best self," I replied, my tone light and casual. I watched as she struggled to mask her discomfort. The more I engaged with others, the more she seemed to retreat into herself. It was exhilarating to see her struggle with the realization that I was thriving without her. The night continued, filled with laughter and camaraderie, and I reveled in the camaraderie of our friends who were oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. As the evening progressed, I caught up with one of my friends, Mark, who had always been a solid sounding board. Sensing the tension, he leaned over and asked, "So, how are you really doing, man?" I took a deep breath, knowing that Mark had been there for me through the worst of it. I decided to be candid. "Honestly, I'm better than I have been in a long time. I'm through with the games and ready to move on." The corner of his mouth lifted in an approving smile. "Good for you, Jake. It's about time you took back control." Amanda, sitting just across from us, was clearly listening. I could see her clenching her jaw, the realization sinking in that I was no longer the man she had taken for granted. And as the night wound down, I decided it was time to drive the final nail into the coffin of her regret. I stood up, raising my glass for a toast. To new beginnings and rediscovering ourselves. The clinking of glasses rang through the restaurant, and I felt electric. As I scanned the table, I made sure to catch Amanda's eye. "And to the people who truly appreciate us," I added, emphasizing the word appreciate. Her face paled, and I could see her fighting back frustration and anger. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment she would confront me and realize just how wrong she had been. I knew she would want to talk later, to explain herself, to perhaps even apologize. But I was ready for that. I wanted her to understand that I had moved on, and nothing she could say would bring back the love and trust we once had. As we left the restaurant, I felt exhilarated. I had shown her the new me, the stronger, more confident version of myself. I wasn't the same man who had been crushed by her betrayal. I was ready to embrace a future filled with possibilities. I knew the confrontation was inevitable, but I also knew I was ready for it. Whatever Amanda had planned for our next encounter, I would be ready to meet her head-on. Little did she know, I was not just a man on a path of revenge. I was a man ready to reclaim my life. The next few days were a blur of emotions and anticipation. I could feel Amanda's frustration simmering just below the surface. She reached out multiple times, trying to initiate conversations, but I was careful to keep things brief and surface level. I was still processing everything that had happened during that dinner, and I wasn't ready to let her back into my emotional space. She texted me about mundane topics, trying to lure me into a deeper conversation, but I deftly dodged each attempt. How was work? Did you see the game last night? Each response was polite but distant. I could sense she was desperate to reconnect on some level, but I wasn't about to let her back in without a fight. Finally, one evening, she decided to come over unannounced. I was sitting on the couch, casually scrolling through my phone when I heard the knock at the door. My heart raced, not with anxiety but with a sense of power. I opened the door and there she was, looking like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine, trying desperately to project confidence. "Hey, can we talk?" she asked, her voice slightly shaky. I stepped aside and let her in, feigning casualness as I gestured for her to take a seat. The tension in the room was palpable. She sat down, crossing her legs nervously, and I could see the flicker of emotions in her eyes: regret, longing, and maybe a hint of guilt. "I've been thinking a lot about the other night," she started, her tone softening. "I know I've messed up and I want to explain." I cut her off, raising my hand. "Amanda, you don't need to explain anything. You made your choices and I saw the consequences." I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of playing the victim. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. "But Jake, I was lost. I didn't know how to handle everything," she protested, her voice rising defensively. "You were always so focused on work and I felt alone. I turned to someone who made me feel seen." I let out a short laugh, a sound that held no humor. "So you chose to cheat on me with a guy who designs clothes. That's your excuse?" Her cheeks flushed and I could see a mix of anger and shame in her response. "It wasn't just about that. I was going through a lot," she insisted, her voice cracking. "I thought we were losing our spark." "Losing our spark," I echoed incredulously. "You didn't talk to me about it. You didn't try to work through it. You just jumped into someone else's bed." The room fell silent, and for a moment it felt like we were both suspended in time. I could feel the walls closing in, and I knew this confrontation would determine if I could finally lay this chapter to rest. "Look, Amanda, I'm not here to rehash the past," I said, my voice firm. "What you did was unforgivable. I've spent the last few months rebuilding myself, and I don't need to hear excuses. I need you to understand that I've moved on." Her eyes widened, and I caught a glimpse of the realization that my transformation was not just superficial. I had genuinely moved forward. "You're serious," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're really done." I nodded, feeling the power surge through me. As I delivered the final blow, "I'm not the same person who would stand by while you disrespected our marriage. I deserve better, Amanda. I deserve someone who appreciates me, not someone who runs off to fulfill their whims." I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, and part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but I quickly brushed it aside. "I hope you can understand that this is goodbye. I wish you well, but I need to focus on my own happiness now." She sniffled, and for a moment I thought she might break down. "Jake, please, I didn't mean for it to happen this way." I leaned forward, locking my gaze onto hers. "You made your choice, Amanda. It's time to live with it." With that, I stood up, effectively ending the conversation. I walked toward the door, holding it open for her. Amanda hesitated for a moment, her face a mixture of anger and hurt, but ultimately she stood and walked out. As the door clicked shut behind her, I felt an exhilarating rush of liberation. I had finally set myself free from the shackles of her betrayal. The power I felt in that moment was intoxicating. I had faced her, stood my ground, and made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate disrespect any longer. In the days that followed, I focused on my newfound freedom. I spent more time with friends, went out on dates, and enjoyed the vibrant life that I had worked to establish. I even started exploring new hobbies, painting, for one, something I had never considered before. It felt incredible to embrace my individuality, and every stroke of the brush felt like a step toward healing. But as I thrived in this new life, Amanda lingered in my mind. I wondered if she would ever truly grasp the impact of her actions, if she would ever understand the depth of my growth. I had moved on, but that didn't mean I was completely free from the memories of our life together. I realized this journey wasn't just about revenge. It was about rediscovering myself, reclaiming my identity, and ultimately, learning to love the person I had become. I knew I would carry the lessons of this experience with me forever, and as I painted my canvas, I did so with purpose, each stroke a testament to resilience and empowerment. The real revenge was not in making Amanda regret her choices. It was in living my life unapologetically and fiercely, embracing every moment and seizing the opportunities that lay ahead. I was more than my past, more than her betrayal. I was a man reborn, and I was ready to take on whatever came next. As the weeks turned into months, my life took on a new rhythm, one filled with joy, growth, and a sense of adventure I hadn't felt in years. I had transformed into someone I hardly recognized, but in the best way possible. Each day was a new opportunity to explore who I was outside of my marriage. I found myself trying new things, meeting new people, and diving headfirst into experiences that sparked joy. I increasingly enjoyed my time with friends. We went hiking, attended concerts, and even took spontaneous weekend trips. It was liberating to embrace the spontaneity of life, and I reveled in the freedom of being able to do what I wanted without having to consider anyone else's feelings. I also took my physical fitness to new heights, hitting the gym regularly and even signing up for a few local 5K runs. The adrenaline rush was addictive, and with each race I felt stronger and more accomplished. But despite the joy that surrounded me, there were moments when the shadows of my past crept in. I'd catch myself thinking about Amanda, reflecting on the memories we had shared. I replayed conversations in my mind, trying to make sense of the sudden shift in our relationship. I grappled with the idea of forgiveness, not for her sake, but for my own peace of mind. I knew I had to let go of the lingering resentment that sometimes bubbled to the surface. One evening, as I was out with friends at a local bar, I noticed a group of people gathered around a table, laughing and enjoying their night. I turned to see who they were, and to my surprise, I spotted Amanda sitting among them. Her laughter rang out like a bell, and for a moment I felt a pang of something, nostalgia perhaps, but it was quickly replaced by the strength I had cultivated over the past few months. I wasn't going to let her presence ruin my night or send me spiraling back into old patterns. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and focused back on my friends. We laughed, shared stories, and toasted to the future. I didn't need to engage with Amanda. I had built a life beyond her that was rich and fulfilling. I felt a sense of pride in how far I had come. But of course, the universe had its plans, and it wasn't long before Amanda approached me. I sensed her approach before she even spoke, her presence sending a ripple of tension through the air. "Jake," she said, her voice tentative. "Can we talk for a second?" I looked at her, maintaining my composure. "What's there to talk about, Amanda?" I asked, my tone neutral but firm. I could feel the eyes of my friends on us, their interest piqued. "I just wanted to apologize for everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." I raised an eyebrow, curious but skeptical. "And what about our conversation? You made your choice. You had your chance to apologize then." "I know, but I thought maybe we could. I don't know, find a way to be friends, just to see how we both are." The nerve! I couldn't believe she was suggesting friendship after the way she had treated me. Friendship, after everything that happened. I shook my head in disbelief. "You don't get to just waltz back in and act like nothing happened. I've moved on from you." Her expression shifted to one of regret, and I could see the fight drain out of her. "I understand if you're angry, but I've changed. I've been working on myself too." "And you think that justifies what you did?" I challenged. "You don't get to cheat, then come back and ask for forgiveness when it's convenient for you." "I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much I took you for granted, how much I hurt you until I saw you out here living your life," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I miss you, Jake." There it was, the confession I had both anticipated and dreaded. My heart ached at the raw honesty in her voice, but I steeled myself against the wave of emotions. "You miss who I was, Amanda. But I'm not that person anymore. I've rebuilt myself, and I'm proud of who I've become." For a moment, silence enveloped us. I could feel the weight of our shared history hanging heavy in the air, but I also felt a sense of resolve. I wasn't the same man who would let her walk all over him. I wanted to be clear that I wouldn't entertain the idea of rekindling anything. "I think it's best if we both just keep moving forward independently," I concluded, my voice steady. "I wish you well, but I need to focus on my own life now." I turned and walked back to my friends, leaving Amanda standing there, her expression a mixture of sorrow and acceptance. My heart raced, but I felt unburdened. I had faced her again, and this time I had been strong. I wasn't holding on to the past. I was ready to embrace the future. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had reached a point of acceptance. I understood that while I would always carry the scars of our past, they were now part of my journey, shaping me into the person I was becoming. I didn't need her approval, nor did I need her. In my life, I had taken the steps necessary to heal and reclaim my identity, and I was finally ready to let go of the pain. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I had learned that true revenge was not about making Amanda regret her choices, but about living fully and authentically. I wanted to continue exploring the world, meeting new people, and embracing experiences that brought me joy. I began to map out my next adventure, a solo trip to the mountains. I wanted to push my limits, challenge myself in new ways, and discover more about who I was outside of the confines of my old life. This was my time, and I wasn't going to waste it. I was ready to carve my own path, free from the shadows of my past, and step boldly into the life that awaited me. The decision to embark on a solo trip to the mountains was exhilarating. I spent the next few days meticulously planning my itinerary, filling it with hiking trails, scenic views, and opportunities for reflection. As the departure date approached, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This journey was more than just a getaway. It was a significant step toward fully reclaiming my life and embracing the new me. The moment I arrived at the mountain lodge, I was struck by the breathtaking beauty around me. The crisp air filled my lungs, and the towering trees enveloped me in a sense of peace. I checked in, dropped off my bags, and set off on my first hike. The trail was challenging, but each step felt invigorating. I was reminded of the strength I had gained since the upheaval of my marriage. I was no longer a man weighed down by betrayal. I was a man on a mission to reconnect with myself. Over the next few days, I explored the mountains with a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in a long time. I hiked through lush forests, scaled rocky paths, and reached stunning vistas that made every ounce of effort worthwhile. Each view was a reminder that life was full of beauty, and I was finally ready to savor it. I spent evenings by the fireplace, journaling my thoughts and feelings, reflecting on how far I had come. One evening, as I sat on the deck of the lodge, gazing at the stars twinkling above, I realized that I had reached a point of understanding. The hurt Amanda had caused me had been painful, but it had also propelled me into this newfound journey of self-discovery. I was grateful for the lessons learned, even if they had come at a high cost. It was in that moment of solitude that I truly understood the concept of closure. As I sat in the stillness of the night, a sense of calm washed over me. I had let go of the anger and resentment that had once consumed me. I was no longer bitter about the past. Instead, I had transformed it into fuel for growth. I felt a profound sense of gratitude for where I was in life, free from the shackles of a toxic relationship and open to new possibilities. On the last day of my trip, I took one final hike to a viewpoint that overlooked a vast valley. Standing there, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me, a mixture of triumph and contentment. I reached into my backpack and pulled out my journal, flipping through the pages filled with reflections, goals, and dreams. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would continue pursuing happiness, cherishing the growth I had achieved, and embracing whatever came next. Returning home, I carried that sense of peace with me. I stepped back into my life with renewed vigor. I continued to nurture friendships, explore new hobbies, and keep challenging myself, both physically and mentally. The world felt full of potential, and I was determined to seize every opportunity. As I navigated this new chapter, I occasionally crossed paths with acquaintances who had known Amanda and me as a couple. They would ask how I was doing, and I would share snippets of my journey, how I had transformed my pain into strength. Their surprised expressions were a reminder of just how far I had come. I was no longer the man who had been shattered by betrayal. I was a beacon of resilience and determination. Months later, I found myself at a local gallery opening, marveling at the art on display. I had taken up painting more seriously and had even begun showcasing my work. As I mingled with others, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Amanda standing there, her expression a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "Jake," she said, her voice hesitant, "I've seen your paintings, they're incredible." I nodded, feeling a distant pang of nostalgia but also a sense of pride in my accomplishments. "Thanks, Amanda, it's been a journey." "Can we talk?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath, recalling the pain and betrayal from our past, but instead of anger, I felt an overwhelming sense of calm. "I think we both know what we need to say, but it's important to remember where we both stand now," I replied, my tone firm but not unkind. She nodded, acknowledging the distance that had grown between us. "I understand. I just wanted to apologize again, to tell you how much I regret what happened. I've been working on myself too." "I appreciate that," I replied, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. "But I'm not the same person who would entertain the idea of reconciliation. I'm focused on my life now and I'm genuinely happy." Her expression shifted to one of acceptance. "I see that. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for how things ended." "Thank you." "Amanda, I wish you well," I said, offering her a warm smile as I turned to leave the conversation behind. As I walked away, I felt liberated. I had finally released the last remnants of the past. I had faced my demons, confronted the hurt, and emerged stronger than I had ever been. The journey of self-discovery was ongoing, but I was equipped and ready to embrace whatever life threw my way. Reflecting on my experience, I felt compelled to share my story with others who might find themselves in similar situations. I wanted to encourage them to seek their own paths of healing, to understand that betrayal doesn't have to define them. Life is too precious to remain in the shadows of others' mistakes. In that spirit, I offered this advice to anyone facing heartbreak. Embrace the pain, learn from it, and use it as a catalyst for transformation. You have the power to redefine your life. Your past doesn't have to hold you back, it can propel you forward. And so, as I continued my journey, I did so with an open heart, ready to face the future and all the possibilities it held. I had emerged from the darkness, and now I was ready to dance in the light.